Good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of Justice for All. I'm your host, George Yates, and I'll be here the next couple of hours. I got two guests today. My first guest is Charles Sevilla. I think he goes by Chuck. He's an attorney from San Diego, California, and he's been a public defender both in the federal system and in the state system, and he's been a criminal defense attorney now for the better part of 40 years. Some years ago, he began compiling lists of humorous things that occurred in the courthouses around the country, and he has written several humor books regarding some of the lighter events occurring in the legal field and in courtrooms around the country. His latest book is Law and Disorder, and he's with us today. How you doing, Chuck?
Great, George. Good to be with you.
Well, your book is called Law and Disorder, and is it out now? I mean, is it on the newsstands?
It's been out since August, and it's available, on Amazon as everything is. And if you want to go to your bookstore, you call in and see if it's there.
Well, the book is called Law and Disorder: Absurdly Funny Moments from the Courts. Charles M. Sevilla. It's laugh out loud funny. I don't even know if we can. A lot of it we can't even talk about. We can't quote on the air because some of the things that occur in the courtroom does. We use some colorful language that we can't always talk about on the radio. But this is your third book, I think. You have two other books of humor, along with some great illustrations in the books. How did you get started writing? Before we get into some of the funny parts of this book, how did you get started in writing humorous books about the law?
Well, as a criminal defense attorney, I would, particularly as a public defender in the 70s, I would come home from a very difficult day at work, which was very challenging with respect to the cases I had, and I needed an outlet. And I always thought humor was a great lubricant to get over life's rough spots. So I've always been interested in humor, but I particularly was focused by my experiences in the courtroom. So I both collected humorous moments, just transcripts of absurd incidences in the courtroom, and I collected them in transcript form. And then I also started writing short fictional stories about a fictional defense lawyer. And both of those ended up going into book form, one into novels about a criminal defense attorney named John Wilkes, and then the Disorder books, this is the third one, which is a compilation of transcripts that many of which are sent to me because I couldn't possibly have read all of the transcripts that are used to compile these collections. So I started putting out a column in a couple of criminal defense magazines soliciting other people's, and of course other people have their own treasure chest of funny moments, and they started coming in, and from that column has arisen three books of humor.
Well, is it really true that someone wrote a motion to kiss my ass?
You bet. You can't. As I said in the introduction of this book, the language of the courtroom is something that, of course, is not for public consumption. So the book has the language, but I know in I think the second book, we deleted the saltier language and put asterisks in their place, but we gave that up on this book, and it's got all of the florid profanity that is very common in the courtrooms. And it's unfortunate that I always think profanity is a cop-out for people who don't know how to speak English, and instead of using the appropriate adjective or verb, they go to the four-letter word, which is a substitute for everything.
I'm reading it, and as I read through, I laugh out loud. For instance, here's one minute order. The court trial resumes with defendant and counsel present as heretofore. Court trial is held. People waive opening statement. Defendant removes his pants, exhibits his backside, and makes statements to the court. Defendant's response is deemed a waiver of opening statement.
Yes.
I mean, this is all through your book. It's these are true things that happen in court all over around the country, and and lawyers send you this. These are what, appellate lawyers that they actually read this stuff. This is occurred in court. They get the transcript and they send it to you.
Yeah, trial and appellate attorneys, and actually judges have sent me some, and prosecutors. I get a assortment from all sorts of folks.
Yeah,
but along the lines of what you just read about the fellow who gave his backside to the court, here's one which is of the same nature. I call it digital identification. So the witness is on the stand, and the prosecutor asks, "Do you recognize the driver of that vehicle in court?" And the witness says, "Yes, I do. Could you point and identify where he's sitting and something he's wearing?" Well, the witness says, "The defendant is sitting right there waving his middle finger at me in a blue smock."
How about the fellow that says, "On July 4th, you had a sawed-off 12-gauge shotgun down your sweats. Again, is there anything you can think of that could possibly even be mistaken for something like that?"
Oh, my God.
Answer, no, unless my penis.
Yes.
So, I think that I've tried cases for 30 years. You've tried them for over 40 years, and these things happen in court all the time. And I guess it all started with you writing them down and taking them back, and then just beginning to compile them. It's fascinating. This is your third book. It's called Law and Disorder. What were the names of your first two?
The first one is Disorderly Conduct, which I did that one with a couple of friends, Rodney Jones and Jerry Ullman. And then the second one I did on my own, Disorder in the Court, by me. And the most recent one that just came out is Law and Disorder, and they're all published by W. Norton. And for that, I'm very thankful. It's a very fine publishing house, and they've treated me right. I also have to give a plug to my literary agent who discovered me, so to speak, Joe Vallely. And I believe he is now living in Virginia. Anyway, let me tell you a story. When I was putting out these humorous moments in the magazine, a very fine progressive writer named Nat Hentoff, who at the time was writing for the Village Voice and other places. Well, anyway, he wanted to publish one of my contributions in the Village Voice. So he gave me a humorous award called the Barney Frank Truth is More Bizarre Than Fiction Award, and this was published in the Village Voice. So a New York literary agent, Joe Vallely, gave me a call the next day, and he said, "Congratulations, you're in the Village Voice. Nat Hentoff has given you this award." And he just said, "Do you write any fiction?" And I said, "I happen to write these fictional short stories of a criminal defense attorney named John Wilkes." And he said, "Great, send me them." And so I sent him some of the stories, and the next thing that happened, he sent them to Ballantine Books, and that started the first of the novels, the John Wilkes novels, published by Ballantine. So at the same time, I with my cohorts, Ullman and Jones, we published the first of the humor books, Disorderly Conduct by Norton, and that did very well, and led to the second one, and now I'm on the third one. Actually, the third one, Norton called me last summer and said, "Do you know that your humor books are flying through the internet, particularly on Facebook?" And I said, "No, I didn't know that." And they said, "Yes, do you have enough for another book?" I said, "I sure do." And that's how the third book became a reality.
If you've just joined us, we're here with Chuck Sevilla. He's a criminal defense attorney from San Diego who has compiled his third book of humorous anecdotes from the practice of law around the country. One of my favorite ones here, Chuck, is the the second noblest profession, you call this little entry, given to you by a lawyer from Alexandria, our neck of the woods. Thomas Carter sent you this one. And this is the transcript. It reads, the defendant said that prior to the occurrence of the instant offense, he hoped to attend medical school and become a physician. However, he said he believes that with a felony conviction, he will be precluded from achieving this goal. He added that he is now considering becoming a lawyer.
Right. I had that one marked also. Very amusing moments.
And you break your book up. You got to get this book. And, you break your book up into various chapters where you talk about one is the judges, another is the defense lawyers, the other is the prosecutors, the police, the jurors, because there's no matter what part of the courtroom that anybody can speak and be on the record, there's something's going to be funny coming out of it. Now you actually at one point did a column for the NACDL, the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, and you did humorous anecdotes for them, and did that sort of led to these books also? Was that part of the etiology of all this?
Right. It helped get me a greater audience of readers, who then became a greater audience of contributors from all over the country. So let me read a couple of favorites of mine. This one actually is from the dust jacket of the first book. The defendant was charged with arson, and he missed his court appearance. So the judge says, "Where were you?" The defendant says, "In the hospital." Court says, "Why?" The defendant says, "Smoke inhalation." Rather telling almost confession.
Yeah, I would say, wait a minute, Judge, I have to take the fifth on why I was there.
Or another one, the defense counsel is asking a witness, the truth of the matter is that you are not an unbiased, objective witness, isn't it? You, too, were shot in the fracas. The witness says, "No, sir. I was shot midway between the fracas and the navel." Or, this is a classic. The judge is being importuned by the defendant. The defendant says, "Judge, I want you to appoint me another lawyer." The judge says, "Why is that?" The defendant says, "Because the defense attorney I've got isn't interested in my case." So the court turns to the defense attorney and says, "Do you have any comments on the defendant's motion?" The defense attorney says, "I'm sorry, Judge, I wasn't listening."
How about this one where the judge says to the defense lawyer, "Why should I put him back on the street, only to have him create a situation where at some point in the future the officers might have to go out and get him again?" And his lawyer replies to the judge, "Well, if that situation arises, and it isn't any different than this, it would only consist of my client standing in the middle of a parking lot, refusing to cooperate with the officers, and being beaten senseless and taken down to the jail where he's medically treated." I mean, it's just too much.
Right.
You can't make this stuff up, can you? I mean, it's actually true, and it happens all the time in courtrooms all over the country.
So,
I remember I know when I first started practicing law, I was kind of bored doing some of the work I did, and then I became a prosecutor. And I remember my first couple of days, waiting for my cases, and I would sit there in court, and I thought, I cannot believe I'm being paid to do this. I'm sitting here waiting for my case, and I get to listen to all the stuff that happens up at the bench. And, of course, most of that is not on the record. It's not going to make it into your book because there's not even a court reporter for it. But it's vastly entertaining what goes on in a courtroom every single day. I mean, we don't have the time to sit down there. Hopefully we try to get our cases tried and get out of there and get on other things. But while you're waiting to have your case tried, it's always something interesting going on, and it's very often amusing.
Right. That's actually, when I was a cub attorney, I started in Washington, D.C., and I would go into certain courtrooms that I knew the judge himself was entertaining, and I would just sit and watch, and a procession of great moments undoubtedly came to pass. just witnessing what was going on. It was an amazing experience, and I got an eyeful and an earful, and a number of those episodes I put into my novels.
Oh, if you've just joined us, we're here with Chuck Sevilla. He's just written his most recent book of humor in the courtroom, Law and Disorder. You have some great illustrations in this book too. As I read through it, I recognized the style of this. The illustrator here. It looks like really all through your book, it looks like a New Yorker type cartoonist with these funny cartoons from courtroom scenes. Who is he, and how did you get him for your book? What's the name of that illustrator?
The illustrator is Lee Lorenz, and he's a terrific illustrator, cartoonist, and his work is very familiar to many people who've looked at New Yorker cartoons and the like. Norton got him for the first book. He's done the illustrations in all three of the Disorder books, and they add a very light touch and add to the humorous spirit of the book.
Well, I've got one of these here where there's a judge on the bench, and there's a big old rooster on the witness stand with a fox sitting at the counsel table and the jury over there in the box, and it's all drawn. And it says, the defendant forcibly entered the hen house. In your own words, what subsequently transpired? I got this big old rooster sitting.
Another one I'm looking at is there's an attorney standing in front of the jury with a bag of money, and he's throwing money to the jurors. The comment by the attorneys at the table is, "Why, it's the most blatant attempt to suborn a jury I've ever seen." Very funny.
Well, what do you now? Are you working on your fourth book now? I mean, I would guess that this sort of thing never stops.
It never stops. So I keep pumping out my columns in the magazines, and ultimately there will be enough for a fourth book. It takes a while, but in time there will be another one generated, I'm sure. Another Disorder book, no less, and I hope Lee Lorenz is around to add his great cartoons.
So when you do these are all actual transcripts of trials. You don't take somebody's memory. These are actual trial transcripts from appellate lawyers then around the country that send them to you?
That's right. I don't want people basically making up stuff and sending to me. So I want the transcript from the court reporter. So that gives it some degree of validity. So when I put it out, I've got a pretty good confidence level that they're legitimate transcripts. And there's no need to make this stuff up. Truth is stranger than fiction, and there's oodles of these moments that are going on all over the country. So many of them, I might add, are not intentional. Most of them are completely unintentional, and those are the funniest ones. When people are adding levity to the courtroom, they usually go over like bombs. There's a great story. I don't know if it's true, but the comedian Lenny Bruce was constantly getting in trouble in the 60s because his act was deemed profane. Today it would just be ho-hum, but right. He was a trailblazer.
Right.
So he was being prosecuted for obscenity all the time. And he told his attorneys he wanted to do his act in front of the court to demonstrate how funny it was, and they'd get it, that it's First Amendment protected. And so he was the client, so he did it, and it went over like a bombshell. So the proverbial lead balloon, because context is everything with humor, and the courtroom was not a place, particularly in the 60s, for somebody to be getting up there with uttering a host of four-letter words. It didn't work. He lost his case all by himself. You have one account here, and I'm not sure if this is. It's so
true that you wonder how funny it really is. But it says, question, isn't it fair to say, based on your experience and your familiarity with the drug community in this valley, that ratting out your supplier, if you are a user, ratting out your supplier is about the worst thing you could do? Answer, no, it's not the worst thing you could do. Question, well, what's the worst thing you could do? The worst thing that you could do? Yes, to your supplier. What's the worst thing that you could do? Answer, quit using drugs.
Yeah, I'd put them out of business.
And I thought, God, that's funny. But on the other hand, you go, whoa, that's pretty serious stuff. You know, quit using the drugs. You put your suppliers out of business. So they'd rather not be ratted out. So anyway, great stuff. And then you, where do you decide to stop with it? I mean, you could make it, you have to cut a lot of them out, and then you just.
Well, because people are sending me the transcripts, they usually come in multiple pages, and so I snip and edit out the stuff that really isn't necessary, and just go with the essence of the humor. But that's the appeal of these books. You can pick up the book any time, any place, and you don't have to worry about recalling plot or character, because there is no plot and there are no characters. So you're ready to go, whether you've dropped the book off at page 22 and let it go for a week, or you're reading it straight through.
Well, that's what I like. This is a coffee table type book, or a book that I'd like to have in my waiting room of my office. You know, people can get a kick out of it. It's kind of like the New Yorker lawyer cartoons all the way through. This one, it kind of does you one better. You get the cartoons all the way through it, just like you would with those New Yorker cartoon books. And then you get the anecdotes, too, so thrown in. So I guess you must sell a lot of these books, because they're the kind of books that a lot of people want to give to their lawyer friends, for sure, right?
Exactly. So I've done a couple of signings in the last couple of weeks, and people are buying them for gifts, which is just fine with me. But you mentioned that last quote you read about the drug supplier and it being sort of representative of what goes on in the courtroom. Another one that comes to mind, I'm not reading, I just remember this one from memory. The lawyer is asking the policeman where he found the cocaine on the defendant. And the officer says, I found the cocaine in the defendant's anus. And the judge says, well, this gives a new meaning to the term crack cocaine.
We're here with Chuck Sevilla. He's just written his most recent humor book called Law and Disorder. We're here. I'm George Yates, and this is Justice for All. We're going to take a short break. We got another 30 minutes to go with some of the excerpts from Chuck's funny book, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Every day is a blank page. Every day you open up your eyes. You can either start over again, or you can continue writing on a page that you disagree with. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that way. I don't want to be in this job. I don't want to have this attitude. And so you either continue writing it, or even worse, you have somebody else write it for you. Who's writing on your page?
Glenn Beck, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m. on K-Talk 1650.
For the very best in down-home music, join us on Saturdays, 11 a.m. for Ramblin' Ralph's Bluegrass Special with the authority on bluegrass music, Ralph Coleman. Saturdays at 11 a.m. on AM 1650 WHKT. Ramblin' Ralph's Bluegrass Special.
The place for authentic Indian food is the India Palace. They feature authentic Indian cuisine, have a party hall, and do catering and banquets. Open daily for lunch and dinner, they showcase an excellent lunch buffet at their Chesapeake and Virginia Beach locations. Visit their two locations at 1437 Sam's Drive in Chesapeake off of Battlefield Boulevard and 5600 Virginia Beach Boulevard in Virginia Beach, and online at IndiaPalaceVB.com. On Facebook, look for India Palace Virginia Beach and India Palace Bar and Grill. Dine at the India Palace today.
Okay, we're back and we're doing excerpts from Law and Disorder, the new book by Chuck Sevilla. Okay, Chuck, I love the ones, I guess, the lawyer ones are probably the most fun of all. How about the one where the DA is saying, he's interviewing a witness and he's saying, would you agree with me that perhaps having some antisocial features can actually be of benefit to a criminal defense lawyer? And the counsel, the other lawyer says, objection, insulting. The DA says, excluding, of course, learned counsel from that question. The witness says, no, I wouldn't agree with that. I don't think the way that our system is set up that using the law to its fullest extent represents being antisocial. I think the ability to be amoral and non-judgmental is helpful. That is also helpful in being a good therapist or psychiatrist, just as I make no judgments as to whether it is right or wrong to have an affair or an abortion. But I certainly don't see an antisocial personality traits aiding in the occupation of an attorney.
Right.
But he recognizes that being amoral and non-judgmental is very helpful in being a criminal defense attorney and being a therapist.
Themes carry across the books. I remember one entry where the psychiatrist, when asked a similar question, said, no, lawyers can be sociopaths. As a matter of fact, some of the best defense attorneys out there are sociopaths.
All right. That's in your book.
Yeah.
I think you took an excerpt.
Well,
but, I did get, it is kind of shocking sometimes that I did an interview with Joel Cohen last week, and he interviewed some judges who, there was a gay judge in San Francisco, Vaughn Walker, who was the one that invalidated Prop 8 when it came before his court. Right. And he was now openly gay because he's retired. But at the time he said, he was asked, well, would you have been able to represent the proponents of Proposition 8, And he said, sure. And it seemed a little shocking that, a gay man, even as an attorney, would want to go advance the interests of something that's just so foreign to his own status. And he says, well, no, that's what I would be paid to do. Then that's what I would do. And it kind of makes you realize that, lawyers are just doing what they're paid to do, right? It doesn't have anything to do with whether it's right or wrong. And it's a little scary sometimes when you think about it that way.
Well, as a public defender, you don't have any choice in your clientele. When you're in private practice, you can be more selective in terms of who you will represent. So I think that if he were in a position where he was in private practice, he would probably be on the other side of that battle.
Yeah, but that's what he had said, and he said that in his interview, and it was one of those comments that you kind of listened to, or I read anyway, and I thought, I'm not quite sure I believe that he meant that, but he said it anyway. So, because meaning, I'm an attorney, why wouldn't I? If I'm asked to take the job, but yeah, you're right. When you're a public defender, and you found so often when you're a public, how many times as a public defender, not talking about your book a minute, but actually defending criminal defendants all these years, how many times did you have a case where you thought there was no way possible you could win the case? You wanted to plead the fellow guilty, but he refused to, and then you had to go to trial, and you ended up winning the trial.
That happens very seldom, particularly I think that may have happened to me once in a marijuana case, but not in a serious felony case. The way our system works today is we call it an adversary system, but it's really a confessional system in which 95, at least in the state of California, over 95% of the felony accusations are resolved by pleas of guilty. And in misdemeanor land, that figure is above 99%. So the system functions on confessions and pleas of guilty. And then, there are the percentage of people who go to trial, which is fairly a low number on a percentage basis.
Yeah, I mean, sentencing is so much the work of a criminal defense attorney anymore, isn't it?
Yes, and that reminds me, I just happened to have the book open to a sentence. Here's the DA recommendation on a fellow's sentence. He says, so the total that the prosecution are recommending is 1,210 years before the defendant is eligible for parole. And after that, after he serves that, then he would be getting 22 consecutive life sentences. It just seems so incredibly absurd to be, it reminds me of, this is a sentence from the first of the books, the Disorder books. Those of you who are Star Trek fans will appreciate this defendant's humor. The court says, sir, is there anything else you would like to say before I pass sentence? The defendant says, yes, Kirk to Enterprise, beam me up.
There's another one, profile of a dull pot grower. Question, you described the defendant as having the appearance of a marijuana cultivator. Answer, yes. How do you correlate scruffy hair and marijuana correlation? I'd say the overall appearance of somebody that grows marijuana is normally somebody that's somewhat scruffy. Question, there's a correlation between hiking boots and marijuana cultivation? Answer, marijuana is usually cultivated in rough terrain, and in that rough terrain you need usually the appropriate attire to get there. Hiking boots get you there. Question, soiled jeans? Are you saying there's a correlation between that and marijuana cultivation? Answer, somebody who does gardening, yes. Question, the Kauai t-shirt, is that a correlation with the appearance of a marijuana cultivator? Answer, I believe there was. It's like a tie-dye type of bright color type thing. Question, and his appearance was part of the basis of your pulling him over? Answer, yes, and the dull appearance. Question, the dull appearance. If I could get you to say what are the components of the dull appearance, I'm not sure I understand that. Answer, well, as of right now, I would say you do not have a dull appearance, but given his honor, maybe a little bit. And question, does it mean that one is sort of not focusing very much on the surroundings? Answer, correct. Then the judge finally says, if somebody is bored, can that make them look like they have a dull appearance? Answer, I believe so. That's beautiful. So
Yeah.
the judge has the same sort of dull countenance as the marijuana grower. Too good. So we're here with Chuck Sevilla. He's just got his new book out, and it's called Law and Disorder. You must get some calls from people around the country that recognize their cases, or when they finally are accepted into your book. What are your do you have some favorite contributors that come and they give you more of your material than others?
Oh, absolutely. A friend in San Diego, George Schreier, who is a regular contributor because, first of all, he's got a great sense of humor, and so he's on the lookout for it. And second, he's a avid reader of transcripts since he does appellate work. So he reads thousands of pages of transcripts every year, and he's always sending me his best contribution. So he, among others, there are a number of regulars who similarly on the lookout for great transcript moments to send. And I might add that when I get them, I give credit to the person who submitted it, but beyond that, I take out all the names of judges and prosecutors and witnesses and defendants because the point of this is the humor of the moment. It isn't to make anybody personally look bad. So I strip the transcripts of the names to protect the guilty.
Yeah, I noticed that in some of you, but there are actually some cases here that you actually have Supreme Court references. These are actually from a Supreme Court decision.
Right. When I'm quoting from the appellate decisions, I'll leave the case names in because it's public record and it's not giving anything away.
How about this one? Jury verdict. We, the jury, felt the plaintiff's closing story was insulting to us. Signed, the jurors.
I love the juror notes can be amazing. Like the juror who was asked, have you served on any prior juries? He said, yes, I was on a methamphetamine case, and it left a bad taste in my mouth.
How about this one on voir dire, no problems at home? Question, at some point in time, did you have problems that developed with your wife? Marital type problems? Answer, Well, not really. We didn't have any marital problems. I just came home from work and she was gone.
Yeah, that's like the guy who was asked, "Were you in a romantic relationship with this woman?" And the fellow answers, "I ain't in no romantic relationship with her. I'm married to her."
Here's another voir dire question. I love some of these juror questions. What is your reason for being excused? Answer. Bluntly, I hate courts. They are responsible for rape and murders in the United States. The gas station attendant where I used to do business was murdered in a robbery. That was the fourth one. I'm getting sick and tired of the way you guys run this place. The Warren Court ruined this country. Question. Where would you like to live? I will be glad to buy you a ticket. Would you like to go to Russia? Answer. I want to live here. Question. Would you like to go to Cuba? I will buy you a ticket any place you want to go if you don't like it here. Answer. I just don't like the way the lousy Warren Court ruined this country. The court. You are excused.
Right. Well, how'd you like to be sitting in jury selection when this juror asks permission to be excused? And he says to the court, "Last winter I blew a hole in my anus, and that hole became infected. The doctors at the hospital had to cut a canal in that area so it could drain. That canal is still draining and will continue to drain for some time, so sitting for long periods of time is painful and messy. The areas need cleaning every 2 hours." Needless to say, that fellow was excused, to the great relief of all of the jurors sitting next to him.
How about a prospective juror who asks, well, what is a foreign object? Because it would seem that some foreign objects could be pleasurable and some could not. Counsel, I think perhaps we should approach the bench before I respond to that. He's asking the lawyer, what is a foreign object? So it just goes on and on and on. If you've just joined us, this is the latest compilation from Charles Sevilla, called Law and Disorder. And it's available on Amazon, so you could just go online and just click and put it down on your Kindle or go buy it in hard copy. Is it Barnes & Noble and all the regular bookstores too?
I don't know what bookstores are carrying it. Certainly, if in San Diego, the local bookstores are carrying it. You just have to call. If you want, if your bookstore's not carrying it, they can easily order it, or you can order it yourself on Amazon or any of the other internet bookstores. They're freely available.
You know, here's another juror note to the court, and this is from a trial in North Carolina. Your Honor, I'm tired of spending day after day wasting my time listening to this bull crap. You know, imagine this is cruel and unusual punishment. The plaintiff is an idiot. He has no case. Why are we here? I think my cat could better answer these questions. And he wouldn't keep asking to see a document. I've been patient. I've sat in these chairs for 7 days now. If I believed for a second this was going to end on Thursday, I might not go crazy. This is going to last for another 4 weeks. I cannot take this. I hate these lawyers and prayed one would die so the case would end. I shouldn't be on this jury. I want to die. I don't want to be thanked for my patience. I want to die. Well, not die for real, but that's how I feel sitting here. And it just goes on and on and on.
Right.
It says, thanks for letting me get this off my chest. Please keep the disorderlies nearby. I may need them. Juror number 5. So this just goes on and on. But the reason why I think that this is the kind of book that you want to have in hard copy is because it's like you said, it's one of those books that you don't necessarily have to read from beginning to end. You just kind of want to pick it up, look at a page right in the middle of it, sit it down. And that's the kind of book it is, or can be and should be in many respects. Just kind of one of those things that's just out there in the waiting room or, sitting there by your bed when you want something funny to read out there on your coffee table and that kind of thing. So it's really great. So you're still practicing law after all these years, huh? You still like it?
I love it. That's why I keep at it. And, of course, it's a great source. It's a great view of the human dynamic because in my line of work, I see a perspective and a spectrum of humanity that most other people don't see. They, of course, crime dramas and procedurals are very popular on television, and they give a perspective which is usually unrealistic. But I get to see the real thing and meet the real people, and it's interesting to say the least.
So you're saying that really very few of your cases are going to trial anymore, but you've really moved more into appellate practice anyway in recent years, correct?
Correct, but with respect to appellate practice, it's almost exclusively cases that have gone to trial, because that's
right, of course.
That's where you're getting the appeals. I don't mean to say that we don't have a lot of trials in the United States. We do, but we have such a mammoth number of people being prosecuted that the system would completely clog to a stop if there weren't a majority of pleas of guilties to make the system move through. So the fine art of plea bargaining has been recognized and regulated to some extent, so that that system works to get rid of many of the cases that can be resolved without a trial.
Well, you know, I'm noticing some of the. I'm actually learning something from your book too. There's actually it does give you an idea a little bit about how jurors think. There's one question here where the judge, or prospective juror, is saying, the other item is the defendant's appearance. How do I say this? It looks to me like he's wearing a disguise. Normally, folks wearing suits and a dress shirt don't wear white socks. And that tells me that perhaps he's disguising his normal appearance. And I should have mentioned that too, I guess. And the judge says, counsel, do you have any questions? And counsel says, can you think of any other reason why my client might be wearing white socks? And the juror says, perhaps you made a mistake dressing him. And that is so true. Yeah. I mean, how many times you talk to your client and you say, look, can you put a little collar on there, you know, so that maybe the jurors don't see the tattoo on your neck? You know, you think that you might want to not wear the, question authority black T-shirt, you know, when you come to in front of the court. Maybe you should, wear a shirt and maybe pull your pants up so they're not down around your thighs, you know. So we try to dress them, but I guess we can't always give it away, can we? I mean, sometimes you can.
With the popularity of tattoos, a lot of these folks are putting tattoos on their foreheads, and it's kind of difficult to defend somebody in a murder case when they have tattooed on their forehead the word killer, which is an actual case. Or in a gang case where they have tattooed the name of their gang on their neck. Those are sort of dead giveaways.
Well, while we're talking about what clothes make the man in court, DA, do you know the defendant? Witness, yes, I do. DA, do you see him in court today? Answer, yes, I do. DA, how is he dressed? Answer, he looks pretty sharp.
Yeah.
Of course, he's asking, he's wearing the blue suit, but no, he looks pretty sharp today. I just love it. I mean, so many people, they just say what they think in court, and they don't really realize even what the question is.
And a lot of times, of course, the people make horrendous mistakes in answering questions. So here is a excerpt in a case where the question was whether the police officer had administered the Miranda warnings to the defendant. So the officer is responding, and he says to the question about that, he says, after reading him his last rites, I explained, and the judge says, not his last rights, you gave him his constitutional rights. The officer says, oh, okay.
Who's on first? Question.
Right.
Despite having 10 or 11 beers before you went, you were sober enough to drive from Trouble's house to the 7-Eleven. Answer. Right. You didn't have trouble driving your car? I did, but I didn't crash. Question. I'm sorry? The court. Trouble with a big T. Question. You didn't have David, known as Trouble, drive your car for you? Answer, no. You didn't know how many beers he had had, and you knew you had 11. About there, 10 or 11, yes. You did have trouble driving your car, but you just didn't crash. Answer, no. Question, I'm sorry. Did I not understand what you just said? Counsel, the question is compound. He said no, he didn't crash. DA, I'll rephrase it. Question, did you have trouble driving your car? Answer, no, nobody drove my car. Question. This is like who's on first, right?
Exactly.
Did you have trouble driving your car? There's a guy named Trouble.
Exactly.
And they couldn't get it straight.
They could
Okay,
not
question. Now we are back to the other problem. Now I am not referring to David. I'm referring to the adjective. Did you have difficulty or trouble, just difficulty driving your car? Answer, not really. You'd only had 10 or 11 beers. So, anyway, too good. So,
yeah. It's an amazing array of
so
humor and the different ways that they pop up in the courtroom.
So are you asked to speak about this book from time to time? You could do a CLE on this,
actually,
Chuck. You could actually pick up. Go ahead.
I am doing one in February at the University of California in San Diego on humor and the law, and of course I have lectured on that topic in the past, and it's always a great source of fun for me to do it because I have all of these examples to give, which make my point. So I'll be doing that one in February, and of course, every time I do a book signing, I'm often giving a little talk. So that's another opportunity to give people some of these more amusing excerpts from the book.
There's there's one here where the defense counsel says, Your Honor, the next exhibit number we have is BO. Any objection if I eliminated BO and went to the next one? Judge says, whatever you want to do. And then the witness pipes up and says, you might skip BS also. Counsel says, good point. Thank you. And I will. How do you, here's another excerpt from George Schreier, who's a buddy of yours in San Diego. Question, how do you know Robert? Answer, he used to be my ex-boyfriend. A little redundant.
Yes.
So, so when is your, are you doing book signings now, or you?
Well, I did, I've done one last weekend, and there's a wonderful bookstore in La Jolla called Warwick's, which has been there forever. And I did a big book signing there a month ago, and we had a great attendance, and they ran out of books. So that was a great experience. And then again, as I said, I did one at a local bookstore a couple of weeks ago. At a bookstore called Mission Hills Collectibles, which is a terrific bookstore, which, as so many used bookstores do today, their lifeline is the internet. And because now a used bookstore doesn't have to simply rely on the neighborhood to survive. They have an outlet to the world through the internet, and many of us who order used books are really patronizing bookstores all over the world, and I certainly do that and have ordered books, used books from people all over the country, and it's usually these little bookstores that have their inventory online with an online presence. So you can go to Amazon and get a used bookstore, for example, a used book, but you're getting that book from one of these small bookstores throughout the country, and they have a deal with Amazon to get it to you. And I've had great success in getting the books in great condition and very modestly priced. So it's the internet has been a death knell to many bookstores, but on the other hand, it's been a lifeline for used bookstores.
Right, because they end up getting all these. You get so many people that can get these books, and my brother is really into the used book, and he'll go in and he's so thrilled when he can go pick up a book for $1, and it'll be a great book because so many people now have just turned them in.
That's right. And when you think of all the work that went into the production of a book, the hundreds of hours that the author put into it, the production by the publishing company, and its birth into the world as a new book, and then as time progresses, the book goes out of print and ends up in a used bookstore, and there's that book sitting there waiting to be bought for a nominal price and to give people the joy of reading it again. So it's great that they can live, and the internet has really helped many authors have their work sustained through the existence of used bookstores and the internet.
My favorite, one of my favorite excerpts from your book is this letter of recommendation that says, "Dear Judge, I'm writing to you regarding my fiancé. I've decided that I'm getting tired of the court's bullshit. He told me to write you 2 to 3 letters a week, so I've been doing that with no response so far. My fiancé is a good person. He did a lot of drugs and was going out with that 14-year-old girl before he went in, but he has changed. He tells me how much he's changed whenever he calls me. I know that he'll be fine once he gets out. He told me that he'll only do drugs one time more, and that's the night he gets out. After that, Your Honor, he'll never do them again. I'm kind of scared sometimes, though, because he threatens to kill everyone when he gets out. He gets so mad at the world and at me, but I still love him. He also told me that he might kill himself if he's locked up any longer. Please help us by letting him out early. I think that will stop him from hurting himself. And if he ever did hurt himself, I would hold you responsible because you are the person that put him in prison in the first place. I will do anything to help him get out early, Your Honor. Please let me know what I can do." And I would hope that anybody that wants to send that to the court, please send it to the lawyer first so he can make sure it doesn't get it to the judge.
That one went straight to the court.
Straight to the court.
The judge got it firsthand, and it didn't go through the defense attorney filter, who, of course, would have rejected that as a preposterous submission and very unhelpful.
Well, I'd like to thank Chuck Sevilla for being with me today, the last hour here on Justice for All. I'm George Yates. His book is Law and Disorder, and as we've discussed, it's available on Amazon and hopefully at your local bookstore. And it's been great having you, Chuck. This is a great book. I laughed out loud. I hope some people that listen to this had a lot of fun with it, too, as well.
George, thanks for having me. I had a lot of fun.
Okay, great. And we'll be back in the next hour with David Diamond. He's a super lawyer from Los Angeles, and he's going to talk about some of his trials and tribulations also as a criminal defense lawyer. We'll be right back. This is George Yates with Justice for All.